So today, going to focus in on Asia since World War II and modern day global issues. So there's a lot to kind of get through, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on the intro here. These are all kind of the same as they have been. So big picture, Korea since World War II. It is divided, much like we talked about in Germany. Germany was West, not communist, East, communist. Uh, Korea divided during the Cold War, North communist, South not communist. And then, concern present day for North Korea is the spread of nuclear weapons and nuclear technology and kind of the tension that exists surrounding North Korea present day and the dictatorship there. Okay, two distinct things to remember about China since World War II. And the first is Mao Zedong. Big thing with him, totalitarian. And we talked about those sorts of things, right? Eliminating your enemies. That's part of the Cultural Revolution. Eliminating your enemies. We have, again, that's this part here, right? Whoop. Uh-oh. That was not what I wanted, so I'm going to get rid of that. It is this idea that the instilling in this next generation, the fear, all those things we talked about in class, right? That you are going to mold the next generation how you want, and you're going to instill fear in prior generations. And that, again, that was a lot of the focus there with Mao Zedong. Again, communism, the dictatorship, those are the sorts of things you should think when it comes to Mao. Deng Xiaoping. One thing we talked about was the four modernizations being similar, or if you're watching this before we talk about it in class, he does this policy kind of similar to the perestroika part under Gorbachev, right? He allows some capitalism. The problem, at least from our perspective, is that he does not do the freedoms part, the glasnost part. He does not do that. And so we have these Tiananmen Square demonstrations where you have students and where you have workers protesting the government. And I'll show you the image in a minute. It's what you should think. You see Tiananmen Square, you should think Tank Man. Just think that, right? Because it'll lead you in the right direction as far as any questions about Tiananmen Square. And the one child policy, a sign of a dictatorship when you make a law that incentivizes one child, but not just incentivizes, but punishes more than one. And it results in an aging population. We kind of talked about that in class, and they have since tried to sort of remove some of those restrictions because there is concern about the demographics, where a high percent of the population is older, because we had a whole generation have one child, or a couple generations have one child now. We have more older people than younger people. That causes some issues. Here is what you should think. Tank Man. Did the government respond peacefully? No. Did they negotiate? No. They sent in tanks. And again, for more context about Tank Man, you'll have to just see class materials, because this is a quick sort of multiple choice Regents review for you here. Okay, so after independence, understand this division of India, the partition. And a lot of times it'll say, like, hey, what happened as a result of whatever it is? It could be Gandhi, it could be independence. And one of the wrong choices a lot is that they peacefully split up. No, there was violence at the partition or division of India. It split, tries to be um, along religious lines with the Muslim nation of Pakistan, East and West, East Pakistan eventually becoming Bangladesh, and India being the Hindu nation. But of course, no place was 100% one or the other. So during this migration of people moving, so Muslims from India going to Pakistan, Hindus from Pakistan going to India, there's a lot of violence. Gandhi is assassinated during this time, and a lot of the conflict occurs over Kashmir, which I'm not going to get into a ton of detail here. If you're watching this in 2025, increased tensions between India and Pakistan recently. And why is that concerning? because they both are nuclear powers also. One of the other things with India in the Cold War, they're one of the leaders of what are called the non-aligned nations. They don't take a side in the Cold War, which allows two things. One, they can sort of over and over and over again manage to um, like get aid from both sides, but they also don't have their policies dictated. They say, we were a colony. Why would we want to have our policies dictated by you again? Okay, so Vietnam, similar thing. This division, North and South, just like Korea. And we have Ho Chi Minh, who advocates for violent revolution to have an independent Vietnam, and also communist. He was communist. Ho Chi Minh was communist. So know that word association, and the United States involvement in Vietnam being an example of containment. So here are our questions related to this. So Deng Xiaoping, I should think Tank Man. It says, what problem is best described in this passage? So Deng Xiaoping, Tiananmen Square maybe. Which response is proposed? Okay, so this probably isn't Tank Man. It's probably 4 modernizations. There's no fundamental contradiction between. All right, had a little issue. So we're restarting here, reading the document. There is no fundamental contradiction between socialism and a market economy. The problem is how to develop the productive forces more effectively. We used to have a planned economy, but our experience over the years has proved that having a totally planned economy hampers the development of the productive forces to a certain extent. If we combine a planned economy with a market economy, we shall be in a better position to liberate the productive forces and speed up economic growth. Which problem is best described in this passage? Okay, so is it the poverty of foreign workers? Doesn't really say anything there, right? Um, the limitations of a market economy. It says having a totally planned economy hampers the development of the productive forces to a certain extent. Huh. Okay. The slow pace of economic growth. Okay. And I think there we go with our answer, right? It's talking about the development of productive forces are being hampered. We can speed up economic growth, which kind of says it is slowed down. The domination by foreign investors, okay, there is not that either. Which response is proposed? And the answer here is 1, creating a mixed economy. Remember, I just told you about UC Deng Xiaoping. You should think blending capitalism and communism, some elements of capitalism. So there it is. So let's look at the questions that go with these next documents. It says, based on these documents, Secretary McNamara believed U.S. involvement in this region would prevent. And then the conflict referred to in these documents is most closely associated with. So let's look at this. In the areas of the rest of Asia, in the key areas threatened by communism, right there you should know what event this is, but let's keep going. In other areas as well, South Vietnam is both a test of U.S. firmness and specifically a test of U.S. capacity to deal with wars of national liberation. Within Asia, there is evidence, for example, from Japan, that U.S. disengagement and the acceptance of communist domination would have a serious effect on confidence. More broadly, there can be little doubt that any country threatened in the future by communist subversion or disruption would have reason to doubt whether we would really see the thing through. This would apply even such theoretically remote areas as Latin America. Then here is a document, Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, communist control before 1965. Here we go. All right. So let's go back to our questions. Sorry. Based on these documents, Secretary McNamara believed U.S. involvement would prevent. Well, rebellions against colonial rule, no. Doesn't say that. Genocides are human right, not there. Up here it is. The prevention, the spread of communism, right? That is clearly the correct answer. The conflict referred to in these documents is most closely associated with. Right away, when it talked about the spread of communism, it's obvious, right? It should be anyway to you. So the answer there, the Cold War. And then let's look at these more modern issues. Again, any of these things could be it. A lot of these things could be relevant as far as an enduring issues essay. Okay, so that's important to keep in mind. Um, Environmental things like climate change or global warming and the cause and effect relationship with the Industrial Revolution, just be familiar with that. And then again, other things, desertification, deforestation. Why are those happening and what is it? Where are they happening? So again, I encourage you to look that over. Famine in the world, and a solution to that is the green revolution, increasing food production. I always tell my students to remember, green, plants are green, increasing agricultural production. Um, Again, we talked about the UN Declaration of Human Rights, but we have human rights violations, we have genocides, we have wars, we have women's rights across the world, right? There's all sorts of human rights violations that have continued to happen since World War II. And then this term that we started to use in the second half of the course more and more, especially post World War II, globalization and that interconnectedness of the world economy. So, also, we have these international organizations with increased interdependence. The World Bank and the IMF have been making increasing appearances on the Regents Exam, for example, about making loans to developing nations, and then the concern of these developing nations getting into more and more debt. Okay, so as we look at this, HIV, AIDS still a global concern. West Nile virus presents a major threat. Ebola kills 11,000, or Zika virus spreads to 50 countries. Okay, just right there, something about the spread of disease or illness, right? Which claim is best supported by these 21st century headlines? And which international response resulted from these headlines? Okay, things about diseases, right? Which one would make sense for how this works? Okay, global interaction can help spread epidemic diseases. Okay, that seems like that might be it, possibly. High income countries don't have to worry about contagious disease. I mean, guys, COVID was not that long ago. We know that's not true. Pollution is the cause of most diseases. These headlines don't say that, right? Epidemic diseases are a primary cause of economic inequality. That, again, not there as well. So the answer is one. Which international response resulted from these things? Okay, the only one that really makes sense is, as you look at it, the choice 4, the World Health Organization and the international community work to find causes and remedies for these epidemics. It's the only one that makes sense, right? This one here, you see diseases in it. Oh, maybe this works. Non-governmental organizations withheld financial support until diseases were contained. That just doesn't make sense, right? What response would we have to that? Oh, we're going to not give you money till you contain the disease. It doesn't really make a whole ton of sense. And then finally, which provision of the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights was violated by the actions in this passage? So what does it talk about? As soon as we refueled and resupplied, we headed back for another air patrol over the region. By this time, the entire villages of Hashaba and Kokono and 90% of Zaifa had been destroyed by fire. Every single nomad hut and every item of loot distributed by the Janjaweed militia 3 hours earlier had been moved. All we could observe in any direction was white or gray or charcoal outlines of what had recently been placed where people lived. I had never seen systemic destruction on this scale. So, everything's getting destroyed, right? Including their villages. Every single hut. So no one shall be held in slavery. There's nothing about slavery in this. That doesn't make sense. No one shall be subject to arbitrary arrest, detention, or exile. Doesn't seem to match. No one shall be forced to belong to an association. It doesn't seem that either, right? I mean, it looks like their hut or their loot being distributed. So again, that doesn't make sense. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his property. Okay, and there we go, right? Where people lived was destroyed. Their property was taken. So that is that one. And that will be where we leave off for today. So again, things, especially this second half, good enduring issues, things to look over even a little deeper than we